Hey guys, Palsteron here, and today let's talk about some of the builds I've been streaming over on twitch.tv/Palsteron. We've basically been testing PoBing for the last few days, and I thought instead of just having that sink into the ether, I want to talk about some of those. Obviously, everybody's theory crafting right now. There's no anything, but yeah, just to put that out there. 3 ideas in specifics, 1 new gem. Let's go over it. So the first big change that I saw was Saboteur. This is, as some of you guys know, Rolling Magma has a special place in my heart, and there is a good chance I will be playing it this league again. So Saboteur got reworked quite extensively, not the Mine Trap nodes, which is very surprising for me, but yeah, they gave us Nemesis on an Ascendancy. Now, you might say, okay, but it's only half a Nemesis, right? So you get 50% chance to return to you, and then projectiles are fired in a random direction. But everybody who's ever played Rolling Magma knows that's the real meaty part, right? And that one didn't change, the random directions. Now, Rolling Magma is not complex skill, but definitely something you need to know how it works. So you basically throw out the skill, and it chains multiple times in the same direction, right? Basically bump, 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 bump. And it can get up to 6 chains on the level 21. With the quality. However, that isn't too impressive, right? Because you're firing and it goes off the screen. So realistically, it's going to hit like 2 times. And if you slow down the projectiles, maybe 3. But what happens once you add random directions is it actually just becomes straight up better. So you fire out Rolling Magma, you, for example, add 2 projectiles. And now instead of outwards, they go into any other direction. And every single chain can shotgun. Now, this is where some people get confused. So you throw out the projectile. 1, 2, 3, right? They hit the ground. Okay, 1, 2, 3 AoEs, right? This can only hit 1 time. So additional projectile technically does not increase that. However, when it goes further and it chains again, and the enemy is somewhere here in between, that second chain can also hit. Only 1 projectile from every single bump. So you want to make sure that, for example, if you have 6 chains, 1 of the projectiles always hits, which means it's still very, very, very strong for consistency to actually have additional projectiles. So you shoot it out, right? Boom, it hits once. All right, so now you get unlucky and it goes off screen and then it goes here or whatever. But if you had 2 more projectiles, these will go into different directions. And as long as 1 of them hits, you're getting 280% damage effectiveness up to 6 times. So we're talking something like Ice Nova Frostbolt level of DPS, just a little bit delayed. Even more fun, I actually tested this one at level 32 whenever you would get it in Saboteur, right? You get your first Ascendancy and you already get basically Nemesis for the skill. And it was pretty damn fantastic. Now, what you see on screen right now is gameplay between level 32 and 48. At level 48, you get Nemesis, but there's actually a way to test it before, and I'll show you how. So you will need a low-level 2-handed mace that you then enchant with this right here. Skills fired 2 additional projectiles. You obviously can only do this if you have a little bit of money left in the league, but for testing purposes, it is, I mean, doable, I guess. So you get 2 additional projectiles and projectiles fire in random directions. So you get 2 projectiles, but you don't get the return. That is not a fair trade-off, right? So make sure that if you're testing this, you're leaving a green gem open where volley would usually be. In terms of what you put on, probably just throw on a woe and then craft on fire damage to spells. Compensate for not having a shield, not having a wand. The only annoying part is you will have to leap slam during campaign instead of shield charge, which I am always a downgrade. Some people like it, but yeah, that's basically how you do it. And then returning proj, you can sub in at level 38, where the volley would have been to kind of simulate returning. Now you might say, okay, but returning is 100% and Sabo only says 50%. Yes, but the Sabo doesn't have a 67% less damage multiplier, right? So overall, you're actually downgrading with the support. By the way, if you don't know what returning does with Rolling Magma, what happens is at the very last bounce, it comes back to you, basically. That's what happens at the very last bounce. Now, usually that doesn't happen because it goes against an obstacle or something. But what is basically happening is if it goes against a wall and you have 50% chance to return, it's basically like having a 50% chance for it to return back. Otherwise, the projectile gets consumed. So especially in indoor maps, it's actually quite nice to have, and it's a little bit reminiscent of Deadeye wall chain. Now, another really exciting note that got added was calculated risk, which causes your crit strike chance to be lucky and damage with hits to be unlucky, which is a very strong effect in general. Now, unlucky hits means that, for example, if I had a Rolling Magma right here, 437 to 655. Let's say it rolls a 514, it would roll another time, lucky, and then take the higher one. You know, learn all about how this exactly works on PoE Wiki. There's a graph here and everything, but the TLDR is it's a very strong effect, and it can get you from, for example, 50% crit chance to 75, which quite a big deal, right? That is a lot more crit. Now, so you get unlucky hits, but lucky crits. Pretty damn good, especially with stuff like Archmage. So if we look at Archmage, Archmage does not have a damage range. And sure, it got nerfed a little bit, but really only touched from 19 to 16%. So straight up, it doesn't have a damage range, so the unlucky hits is completely negated. Now, I'm still thinking about whether I should League Start this, but I will tell you a few ups and downs of what I've basically tested so far. So damage is quite crazy, I'm not gonna lie. The clear is also nice, although it is delayed. You have to remember that. Did I just crash? Uh-oh. Okay, I mean, this might also be a downside, but I don't think you're ever gonna feel the hurt of damage. Now, I will say that the auto targeting of mines felt a little bit awkward. So I tested this with high impact mines, and there were some problems with it because usually what makes mines good is, I mean, a lot of factors. Obviously very strong, you get frenzy, you get power charges, you can cast your stuff pretty fast, but it doesn't auto target. So if I put my mines here, it does not target over there, right? It will actually target wherever I have the mines, even if there's an enemy nearby. And the reason for that is the random directions, right? It doesn't actually like pinpoint to the target, which made the experience a lot more, not annoying, but definitely different than Hex Blast, for example, which just straight up auto targets. Another thing I should add here is doesn't freeze, which if you're thinking, oh, is this going to be my Hex Blast replacement? I think the fact that it's fire is actually a huge downside. Now, if you can somehow compensate for that, sure. But I will say I'm really going to miss the freeze. And with delayed damage, right, like often you actually, if you want to be efficient, right, you have to run into these packs or like sideways, and they are going to touch you. And you're not in the best spot to actually build defenses on the tree. Your Sabo, sure, you do get Born in the Shadows. You can scale a little bit of defenses, but at the end of the day, I'm not sure if this is going to be a great shell. Mainly, I feel like this build will need some gear to actually get going in terms of defense, but it does have to create the damage to boot. And then cast on crit might be a little bit annoying to get going. Now, I know that this gives you lucky crit, and I'm not going to deny that it's not going to make it easier, but cast on crit before awakened cast on crit is pretty frustrating to me. So awakened cast on crit has like up with extra levels from the mastery, will be on like level 9. It has like 34% CDR, and you can easily fill up the rest. That is a whole Ascendancy worth of CDR on the Sabo, and it's not like you can really take that, right? You will have to take Born in the Shadows, the lucky crit, the random direction. So you have one node left that's either going to be trigger bots or clockwork, right? Which you're gonna have to go trigger bots in the end because it's just very nice. And then, okay, let's say you have lucky crits. Now, as a custom crit build, you don't really want to be on like 75 to 90% crit, and lucky gets worse and worse the higher you go in crit. So it's really perfect for, I don't know, an Archmage archetype where you have like 50% crit or something and you get maximum value out of it. But do you really want to be the cast on crit build that has 75% crit? It used to work on something like cast on crit DD, but that was only because you did not have to connect every single time. If every single time you don't connect on rolling magma, you're losing DPS. So what I'm trying to say is I think this one's definitely League startable, but you'll have to figure out your defensive shell. Otherwise, it will feel very melee. You don't have freeze. I'm a little bit concerned about that technically, but there is a chance I will League start this. Now, the second build I want to try out, and actually I'm very hyped about, I need to finish making this video so I can start leveling this, is Smite. If you compare that to one of the craziest skills right now, which is Volcanic Fissure of Snaking, which has 318 and it will triple hit, right? So you have 318 times 3 and then times 0.7 because of the attack speed. It's looking a lot grimmer. Obviously, this one has access to stuff like Warcries because it's a slam. However, Smite, we didn't even talk about its aura yet. The aura gives you a ton of flat damage, and this is basically a Wrath at round about level 19 to 20 worth, and it also scales as an aura effect. So basically, if you scale aura effect, you're scaling both your Wrath and your Smite effect, and you can just go raw lightning, which also pairs incredibly well with something like Paradoxica, for example. You're going to get a ton of flat that's going to scale double damage. I think that Smite is probably one of the most underrated skills currently in the game and has been overshadowed by Lightning Strike for quite a while. However, Lightning Strike just got a huge hit with 50% less damage with hits and ailments, which is quite rough. The skills were, I wouldn't say close together, but they were competitive with each other before, with Lightning Strike obviously having Val Lightning Strike, which also got nerfed, by the way. So Val Lightning Strike got down to 75% damage effectiveness from 114. That's quite a big hit, around about 40% less damage. So what I'm trying to say is I think Smite is actually kind of interesting. Now, if you've never seen Smite before, I actually thought it would have a similar playstyle to a lot of these strike skills where it doesn't really... it just doesn't feel good to clear with, right? But then I put on some gear and I kind of realized that the skill is a lot more legit than I thought. So it actually has quite a bit of AoE. Let's see if we can see like a pack. Yeah, like this right here. And this is not even Val Smite. Val Smite hits like basically the whole screen. But yeah, this will be most of your gameplay. Obviously the damage is completely arbitrary here. I just threw together some stuff, right? But this will be the playstyle. It also has really cool MTX. This skill... I've done some pobbing over the last few days, and I'm actually very, very surprised not more people are talking about it. Now, one of the things I'm really surprised by with this build is just how much damage it dishes out for having pretty damn good clear on very little gear. So I've basically threw together some gear right here, which you can... I don't know what it's going to be. It's approximately 6-ish divines is what I came out to be. This is with level 19 gems. You only have quality on the ones that you really care about, like Assassin's Mark, Mark on Hit, and Smite itself, that you get from like lab or whatever. Everything else is 0. No Awakened Gems. There is a 6 link right here, so if you remove Added Lightning, it's a little bit less. I have a few things ticked here for that damage. For example, Val Smite, which is going to be up every so often, and it actually holds out for, with more duration, like 12 seconds or so, which is incredible, right? So it's kind of like pressing Life Tap Corrupting Fever on a champion for adrenaline. So there's really not that much fake damage I can think of. Maybe like the Golem or something. Assassin's Mark is automated. It's basically just going to be pretty damn cozy one-button style. Let's talk about some of the config real quickly. So we have the new mastery right here, right, which is only 15%. If you're wondering why I'm taking a useless one here, that is why it's in the config. The res is basically just all the suffixes, right? Then the Golem buff, so you get an extra 8% increased damage and then also 20% AoE, which is going to be very nice. Now, Smite, I put 6% less damage because it counts the melee hit twice and the area hit is slightly less, so to kind of average that out. And then I have Percruel Stow in here. Now, we just talked about lucky hits earlier and how strong it is, right? It can basically give you up to 33% more damage. And there is a new mechanic in the game, which are mercenaries. And they will give you... they can basically be an aura bot for you, or you can be an aura bot for them. And if they're an aura bot for you... well, you can, for example, use Percruel Stow, which has lightning damage of enemies hitting you is lucky, which that downside you do not get. Only your Merc gets that downside. And nearby allies damage with hits is lucky, which one of those allies is you. And that is incredibly, incredibly strong for Smite, because Smite as basically just all lightning damage. It has an aura, if you don't know. If you hit something, you get that aura for a while, and it is spread out like crazy. And the further spread out your damage is, for example, if your damage was 1 to 1000, you would straight up get that 33% more damage. And the more it's together, the less useless lucky becomes. You can actually scale this with aura effect on top of Wrath, which also has very spread out damage. With something like Champion in late game with Inspirational, or Champion of the Cause, Reservation Mastery, and increased aura effect from your body armor. And there's a reason people like this skill for Leaguestart, because this flat damage means that you are less reliant on your weapon early game. If you think about how big a weapon upgrade can be early on, and if you lose the gamble, it's like, okay, I'm gonna run around with this level 20 weapon at level 40. That's really unfortunate. That doesn't really happen to you as much because you just get so much raw damage from the gem itself. In this PoB, I chose to go Slayer, and that's for a few reasons. First up, I don't think it's going to be very affordable to get a Celestial Brace early on. Everybody's looking for this on Champion right now. You're probably not going to have too much luck there. I'm just gonna tell you straight up. So maybe you should be thinking about going Slayer before that. There's definitely a Champion version of Smite, but I would personally not recommend it early on. But that's just up to me. So I really like having Brutal Fervor early on in the league. A lot of the stuff that kills you also is dots. If you have your basics covered, then yeah, recovery just is the last thing that a lot of builds can't figure out. Champion will also have quite a big problem with that because you don't want to just rely on leech, or at least not on leech that isn't up whenever you're out of combat, right? You get impact, which is a ton of AoE, which is gonna feel so goddamn good on the skill, and just a ton of raw damage. You can also later maybe go Void Forge with Overwhelm, but that's like for later. So there's definitely like an angle for champ. Now, if you don't know how Smite works, this might be a little bit deceptive because it quote-unquote only deals 488% base damage, which is pretty high for a hit, right? But then it has 85% attack speed, so it's a little bit slower than normal. Not as slow as slams, obviously, but somewhere in between. But the thing is, you can actually hit twice with the skill. So if we look at an enemy right here, for example, it's not the best example. I can't really isolate one right now, but basically it's exactly like Lightning Strike. So if you hit from a certain distance, you will overlap twice. The way you will see whether you overlap twice is whether you see 2 explosions, and then you just know. So you don't want to stand exactly on top of it, a little bit away. In my testing, it's actually been a lot easier to double hit than on Lightning Strike, but I don't know. Maybe this Essence is going to hold out a little bit longer. Let's see. Yeah, so you can see the double hit right here. They're overlapping. Maybe you can do a still frame right there. It was definitely double hitting all the time, which means you actually get twice the damage. Now, what does that mean? On a level 20 right here, you can see 488.6. So let's round that up to 489 times 2. Then you have to subtract the attack speed times 0.85. 831% damage. Another reason why I'm really excited about Smite is that I might get to play it with Savior. I haven't played with the sword in a while, and I just remember having an absolute blast. If you don't know Savior, it's basically something you use as an offhand, so you could dual wield on this build later and go Whirling Blades and scale stuff like dual wield block. I actually checked that you can easily get block capped even on a dual wield build nowadays. And yeah, these reflections do your damage, right? You get those 2 reflections, and each of them will do half of your damage. So you will basically, it's like a stat stick that doubles your damage, and it also summons those clones that will just go out and give you more clear speed, like way more overlaps. It's just a fantastic build. I don't know if I'm going to go for that in endgame, but I did cook up a little bit of a PoB. So this would be it, right? You can see the effective hit pool went up by quite a bit because I'm also spell block capped with Versatile Combatant here. Now this one is actually with gear. It's not with Mage Blood yet, so I just want to make that clear. I have a Taming, I have a Yoke of Suffering, I have a Paradoxica, and I have a Savior, and I improved a lot of these rare items. I also have a Watcher's Eye, although that one is partially only for defense, and I have a Lethal Pride here to give me rage on melee hit, which makes it a lot easier. I don't have to path all the way over there. One thing that is a little bit sketchy is you rely on the Fortify on hit from your body armor, which is not 100% of the time. It's only quote-unquote 17% of the time, which should be okay, but might be an issue down the line, so you might have to repath there. We'll have to see, but I think this could be a really nice one. As you can see, the damage is already huge, and that is pre-Mage Blood, pre-absolutely crazy gear. And the absolute best thing at the end, it is a level 1 skill. So you can technically level with your skill from level 1 on. Kind of like Spark, right? Which for me is a big deal. I really like that ramp up. I don't want to like respec 3 times, oh this, and then P-Conk, and then Explosive Conk, and then in maps sometimes I'm gonna like swap at level 80 to my build. I don't like that personally. I really want that ramp up. So yeah, today I'm gonna try out this skill, and I'm gonna keep you guys posted. I guess one more thing here, Smite of Divine Judgment is quite a good skill from what I've tested. I haven't personally felt the extra clear that much. You're losing a little bit of damage. I know you see the 370 here, and you think it's a lot less than the 488, but do note that it has 38% more area damage as well with the quality, and this one has 9% less area damage. So that one compensates as well. It comes out to around about 6% less damage than its predecessor, but it also doesn't have the aura, which you might think is a big deal, but what you can do is you can actually do Smite of Divine Judgment and then press a separate Smite or Val Smite every so often to get the buff, and you can use the mechanically better skill while still getting the aura. I've also seen some old posts about Hateful Accuser and how this works with Smite. You can basically summon these Phantasm alongside the boss. I don't know, and basically overlap hits. I don't know if this still works, if it even ever worked. Also something I'm going to try out, but yeah. And the last one here is the Elementalist rework. And for a lot of people who've been asking, who've seen what I've been pobbing on stream, yes, I will be reworking Explosive Arrow. I was even thinking about playing it for a bit, but I would really like to do new stuff. We'll see. It is technically new because we're scaling golems, but just so you know, it's on my radar and it will be updated both on Maxwell and there will be a video. All right, but what changed? So Elementalist just got uber buffed and I want to go through it. The first change that might look like a nerf, but is actually, in my opinion, a buff, is the Shaper of Flames, which was already very strong, right? All damage can ignite, yada, yada, yada. You don't get the 25% more damage with ignites anymore. Instead, you now get enemies ignited by you convert 40% of their phase damage to fire. Notably, this is not additive with stuff like Cloak of Flame, which is a different modifier. It's multiplicative, basically, which is not a good thing, by the way. You want it to be additive. So you might think that's unfortunate, but there is actually some tech. Now, there is a belt called, I think, Chaos Binding. Yeah. This one gives you nearby enemies convert 25% of the... So this is the same wording. This actually does work, and you can put this on your Merc. However, it's only whenever the Merc is nearby. I did hear, however, that the nearby is quite good. It is 6 meters, which is almost screen wide. So I don't know if I would call it reliable, but either way, it's a very strong option. And then there's also Pyroshock Clasp, I think was its name. Yeah, there's another belt that has the same wording. Enemies ignited by you, enemies shocked by you. It can get up to 30% right here. I actually don't know if it scales with Catalyst, but it might. And you can get to 100% or almost 100% total, which is quite strong. Straight up, this change is huge because mainly the biggest problem with EA Elementalist was just the defenses. But that is not even close to the biggest rework. The Golem node right here got reworked. So it used to be that you had to take 4 points to get the Golem package, right? You got +1, So in total, with the +1 on the tree, you would get to 4. Okay. So you get buffs from 4 things. Then you get also increased buff effect here, increased buff effect here. Okay, it's a lot of investment. Elementalist is now at least pretty damn crowded. Summoned golems are resummoned. You always have to take both anyways because this node has the golems are immune to elemental damage, and if you don't have it, your golems just die over and over. But the reason this is so huge is because all the golems just got reworked, or basically all of them, right? Like all of the ones that give any notable amount of buffs. And if you see this in my config right here, that is because I have ticked off the golems and I've just put what they give right here, and we'll go over it right now. So the Fire Golem, instead of just giving a little bit of increased damage now, actually gives way, way more. Do note that this is with 200% increased effect, what I'm about to tell you. With 200% increased effect, you get 100 from the Ascendancy, you get 80% from the tree, 20, 20, 40, and then the last 20 is from the quality of all the golems. So there's no shenanigans with like going Golem Amulet, sacrificing jewels or whatever. This is like baseline. From the Fire Golem, you get 90% increased damage, and they also added increased AoE on it now. So what that means is you're not reliant on Heart of Destruction anymore. You don't need it anymore. You have better stuff to do, which we'll also go over. But yeah, that's the first thing. That's the Fire Golem. It is incredible, super strong. The Chaos Golem also got reworked. It now gives you dot multi with the effect that's 48% dot multi. And it gives you Chaos Res. So you're going to go into maps with a ton of Chaos Res. Now, obviously, you can say your totems can die. Do you really want to rely on it? Well, when it comes to Chaos Res, a lot of people are already capping with something like Progenesis, right? So we'll see, but it is super, super cozy, especially for Leaguestart. Then we have the Stone Golem, which got still the same region as before, still very, very solid. But they gave it global defenses. With that effect, this is 60% global defenses, which counts for your armor, counts for your evasion. Very solid. And then the Lightning Golem is probably, like, I don't know if it's the biggest one, but it's the biggest quality of life upgrade. You now get so much attack and cast speed. You already got this before, to be fair. It only went from 9 to 10, so it's not like a big deal. But it got a second line, 54 mana regenerated per second. So it's 18 with the effect. You're never going to run out of mana. We don't have to use life tab anymore. It is a big deal. And then if you want to add a fifth, so you can only have 4, you can either add Ice, which gives you crit chance, which is kind of lost, but it does give 1300 accuracy rating, which is basically going to eliminate any need for other accuracy on gear. There's also Stone Golem of Safeguard, which gives you melee damage taken from golems. I'm not 100% sure I like this because I don't want my golems to die, but it is also an option. So yeah, TLDR, the immune to LE damage is now in this 1 point. The resummon is now in this 1 point. You get +2 golems from that 1 point, and you still get 100% effect. The only thing you lose is the other percentage effect per golem, but you just, you save 2 Ascendancy points. It's just so goddamn efficient. So another thing that happened on Elementalist is they buffed the Shaper of Storms node. It now gives 25% base shock instead of 15. If you don't know, you can scale this static shock so that basically no matter how big your hit is, you're going to inflict a 15% shock. And you can scale that with increased effect of non-damaging ailments. For example, you get 20% here, right? You would say, okay, my minimum shock is 15 times 1.2. Now my minimum shock is 18 on every small tiny hit of the EA, right? But they buffed that to 25. So what happens now instead is you would go from 25 times 1.2. You would immediately go from 25 to 30. That means to get max shock on a build that isn't even hit focused, you only need 100% increased, and that is pretty easily done with Unbound Ailments, which already a Awakened version would immediately get to like 70 or so. You get 10% from the small node, and then 20% from here, done. Enemies take 50% increased damage, which I'm not 100% sure yet if I'm going to take that over Heart of Destruction. I feel like with how much AoE we already have right now, maybe it's not needed, but hard to say. So Explosive Arrow got a huge buff for the build, which was needed. So don't like think it's like S tier or whatever now. It needed a buff. It was an outdated build in terms of its power level. So this one is very good to see. This is something that happened to a lot of Elementalists over time, right? The game got harder and they adjusted it, and I'm very happy about that. However, there are 2 potential downsides I can see. So the first, I want to highlight this though, because it's important. I think that this build is going to feel so good whenever you take the Golem node that I'm literally thinking about maybe re-league starting EA. It's probably not going to happen if I find something else because I like playing new stuff, as you guys know. But like, no matter how this scales into like tier 17s or something, which I personally don't care as much on a league starter, the feel like the power level of taking that 1 Golem node and then throwing on 4 Golems and getting your region figured out, you're going to go into white maps with like an extra, like, I don't know, what is it going to be at that point? Like maybe 45% chaos res. You get so much region. The attack and cast speed is going to feel amazing. Your mana is fixed. You get a ton of early dot multi, the AoE. I think it's going to feel great. Regardless, though, there is definitely a concern for endgame, and I simply do not know. I don't have any experience really with Golem playstyle. I've talked to some people. I've had mixed results. They mostly said it's fine, but it might need some chaos resistance in endgame because it is immune to elemental damage. But yeah, if that ever happens, you might have to actually take 4 points to get it chaos capped, and then you're probably going to be good. Also, on some bosses, they are just running in, for example, Cyrus Storms or whatever. So not sure how relevant that's going to be for your day-to-day mapping, but still. One thing I will say that a lot of people are missing out, though, the fizz damage taken as fire makes it so your golems are now not as susceptible to fizz anymore. And if you have that comps binding on top and you're converting like 70, 80, 90%, your golems are not going to get like destroyed because, once again, they are immune to elemental damage. Everything that gets converted is not just reduced, it is literally like nullified. So physical damage, I think if anything, it's going to be chaos and you might have to adapt. What I'm maybe a little bit worried about is that this is only against ignited enemies, which on EA, you don't have to wait for the big ignite. Every small hit will already ignite. So it should be always quote unquote, but it's still not perfect. It's not like wearing a cloak of flame. And for example, if one of the new bosses phases out for a long time, right, it's not ignited anymore, and it's going to hit you with its effects, and it does a lot of fizz damage, then that might be a hindrance. Either way, the old EA guide definitely needed a little bit of a refresher, so that's what I'm going to do this league. It's a perfect opportunity for that, and yeah, look out for that on Maxwell. I'm also going to post a video. One more skill I want to look towards too is Spectral Shield Throw of Trarthus, but it's just absolutely impossible to say anything about it because it's hard to say how this skill actually shotguns. I've talked to quite a lot of people at this point, and they're a little bit split on that, but if my math's correct, it's probably around about 60% more damage than normal shield throw if all the shards that are getting thrown out are actually connecting. If you haven't seen how the skill works, behind me, he's throwing it right now in the reveal, and you basically throw out the shield throw. You don't have to connect with an enemy, right? That's the first thing. I always hate it when you throw it and you don't connect, so you have to very rigorously kind of target. You only have one projectile to throw out, but this one is, you basically place it down, it's like a totem that stays there, and it just like shoots out projectiles over time. So, like I said, if my math's correct, this is going to be very strong, but it's impossible to know until I test it. It might be really good for cast on crit, right? All of that. I also don't even know when you're ever going to get that gem, because this is a special gem that isn't the Transfigure gem. It drops from the Mercs, but definitely something I want to try out eventually. But yeah, definitely tell me down below if you would like me to post more videos like this in the future. I usually do all of this on stream, like I said, over on twitch.tv/Palsteron, but I thought it would be nice to kind of talk about some of these ideas that are going to get shafted and I'm never going to play, but maybe it's something for you. And I'm also going to leave some of the PoBs that I talked about down below just for research. Do not actually use those. They're very, very sloppy. The gems are usually sloppy. These are just stuff I throw together, right? I don't min-max like these PoBs unless I actually choose it, because it obviously takes a lot of time. As for upcoming videos, the next one will be talking about all the nerfed builds of my old stuff. Hex Blast, Archmage of Ice Nova, Power Siphon of Archmage Ballista. All of those are going to be covered. Then I'll have a video about whatever I'm going to league start. I will do the rework of EA Ballista and some other cool stuff. So definitely stay tuned. Thank you guys for watching. And since I still don't have a slogan, see you next time.